it's just kind of weird. Andrew's brother was kidnapped and murdered in 1981 when he was 14 years old. And they never found out who did it. So when Andrew was 12, and when it all happened, the grief counselor at the cemetery was sort of like clairvoyant. She always told him to go to the place where his brother's body was found, but he's like, would never do that. So it was Ina and La Cañada. And every time we would pass by that area, he would say, oh, that's where my brother's body was found, because it's kind of like a lot of desert and stuff. And so anyway, I had just had my daughter, and they were going to sell the condo that we were living in like, I don't know, 3 or 4 months. So he told me I was going to look for a house just for the heck of it, because we wanted to rent somewhere new. And he's like, oh, no, don't do it right now. We don't need to do it right now. But I did anyway. And he's like, okay, well, don't get any place that says agent, because they do. But credit check is a big pain in the ass, So I saw this one ad, and it said agent right on it. And I called it and got the address, and he went there. And it just seemed like, I don't know, like a cool ad. He went to the house, and he called me, and he's like, well, I'm driving down the street, but I think it's the wrong street, so I don't know, it's like a dead end. And he went down, he's like, there's this house here, and it's abandoned, there's no for rent sign or anything. I'm like, well, don't go in it, And I'm like, is it the right address? He's like, no, it's a totally different address. And I'm like, well, that's not it, don't go there, And it was kind of getting dark, and he's like, well, I'm just going to go see, because it looks like a cool house anyway, and it looks like no one's living there. I'm like, you're crazy, And he's kind of a scaredy cat. So anyway, he goes in, and it's getting dark. He's like, oh my God, this house is so freaking cool. He's like going crazy. He's like, you're going to die when you see this. You're going to love it. Because we like older houses, and it's hard to find like ones in good neighborhoods in Tucson, He's like, well, wait until you see this. Oh my God, we have to get it. I'm like, it's not even the right house. Get out of there. What are you doing? And he's in there, like a door closed behind him. Like, get the hell out of there. He's like, oh, it's kind of creepy, but it's cool because it's like dark. He's like, he walked into this room, and he couldn't see anything. I'm like, get out. So anyway, the next day, we both went there, and we met the lady, and we gave her a deposit, and she wrote a receipt, and it ended up being the right house. She had just given us the wrong address. And we were outside, and he's like, it feels like someone's been buried here. I'm like, yeah, it's creepy. I'm like, you can never leave me alone in this house. I don't know why I get a weird feeling. And before that, we had lived in like a 200-year-old house. We never got freaked out at all. I would stay by myself and everything. And this was like from the 1940s, this house. It wasn't like an old rundown house. It was like a cute house. And he's like, it feels like someone's been buried here. So anyway, we leave the deposit, and we go back home. And he was gone, and I was talking to his mom, and his brother's skull had been at the U of A all these years, and like that.
Why?
Just for research purposes.
Oh, like it was donation?
Well, no, they had kept it there because they never found as evidence, but they kept it, so they just kept it there. So finally they released it, and it was buried with the rest of his body that week. But Andrew didn't know it. So anyway, his mom calls, and I was just talking to her, and I told her we found this really cool place. She's like, where is it? I'm like, I'm in La Cañada. She's like, well, do you realize where that is? I'm like, where? She's like, well, that's where Richard's body was found. And I'm like, oh, that's weird. Usually Andrew always says that about that area, and he didn't say anything. She's like, yeah, as a matter of fact, I have his death certificate right here because his skull was just buried. I'm like, oh. And she's like, so I have the address. I'm like, oh, what is it? And she told me the address, and it was the same house.
Holy shit. That's where his dead body was found?
Yes.
Holy shit.
So as she was saying that, Andrew clicks in, and I told him, and he just like freaked out. It was crazy. So we had to go back to the house to meet the lady, and we told her, and he was just like, it was just crazy. And he was so torn up because he didn't know if he should stay and live there. Like, he thought his brother was calling him there for some answers because he's really torn up about it all these years, And there was like this concrete concrete slab that looked like it used to have a shed, And Andrew says he's always told me that he's had these dreams about his brother, like, hiding in some kind of shed. I mean, it could have been anything on that concrete slab, but there was a big stain there. And when we had visited there, Andrew's like, oh, that looks like a blood stain or something before this. And also in that dark room, it was like a kind of like separated from the house. It was all wood, and it was like a wood floor, but it had carpet on it, and it creaked in one spot. And when we were just looking at it before we knew this, Andrew's like, oh, I'm gonna lift that up. Maybe there's something under there. And we were thinking like just some old cool thing or something, you know. But now he's thinking, what if that was like evidence, you know? And it just sucks because we still think about that house, and we're like, what if there was a clue there or something, you know? And I really think, I mean, it had to have something to do with his brother.
He was murdered in that house?
Well, his body was found there. And back then, they didn't really investigate, so they just assumed it was found outside. And when we were standing outside is when he said, seems like someone was buried here. I mean, it was like feet away from where his brother's body was. I know. So, I mean, it was like his brother calling him there. He had just, like, been buried. Then, a week later, or, like, that same week, I mean, within a week or a week later, the house that they lived at when the brother died and became missing, they sold it to this woman, and she called. And I would have never, ever, ever believed this. But I heard the message because I lived close by, and I came home and got the message to her. She called Andrew's mom, and I heard the message, and it said, this is, I don't remember her name, so-and-so, but if you could please call me back, some weird things are happening, blah, blah, blah. Then she called back again, and she's like, you know, my daughter is seeing this boy, and it's like, it's really weird, and I want to talk to you, and it's like this weird stuff is happening all around that same time. It's just like,
oh my God.
I know, very, very freaky.
Wow.
Anything happened since then?
No. I'm trying to think. I don't think so. I mean, like, Andrew's gone back to the house a couple of times, but I think he's only stayed for a little bit because there's people around and stuff. But like, I wish that we had moved there because I really think there would have been an answer. And he thinks that he would have gone crazy digging up the yard for bones because they never found all of his body, you know. But it's really weird because it turns out that the officer that worked at his brother's school knows the lady who lived there. And I guess her husband had died, and he used to go over there and help her and stuff. And I'm like, hello, he totally did it, you know? Because if someone saw him there, no one would question it. And why would some random person throw his body? I mean, it was a lot of land, but it was right by our house. Why would some random person go by this woman's house, you know? And
the officer?
And Andrew's mom's like, oh no, he helped us look for Richard. I'm like, they always do. Don't you watch Forensic Files? Jeez. And she's like, oh, but he was out of town. Well, when did he leave? And was he in Phoenix and come back? You know, who knows? Yeah. And then she's like, Andrew remembers that when he did go help look, he took Andrew to go look for his brother, and he looked in the desert. Like, why would you look for a teenage boy who's missing in the desert? You know? And he referred to him in the past tense. So it was,
What?
Really creepy. But, I mean, it could just be a coincidence, but I totally think it was his brother calling him there.
Did you guys get a room
you know?
yet?